This is the hidden threshold, a quiet crossing, a place where practice deepens and belief is examined from the inside. Here, we explore devotion without dogma, discernment without dismissal, ritual without performance, not as instruction, not as certainty, as a lived, evolving path. I'm Veyrin Vale. Let's begin. We began this season between certainty and chaos. That's really where episode 0 left us. Being real about the fact that most people are somewhere in the mess between being pushed to pick a side and looking for a new system that will magically fix everything. Tired of certainty that gets so stiff you can't challenge it. Tired of chaos that's all noise and no shape. Stuck in that middle, you start asking a different kind of question. What does it look like to stand here on purpose without giving up your power to either extreme? That's the threshold, the kind that isn't obvious. It's easy to miss, like a hidden door in a busy room. It's not really hidden, but you have to train your attention to see it. Now, here we are, 10 episodes in, and honestly, we're still hanging around at that same threshold. Before we wrap up season 1, I want to take a moment to reflect on that. There's a very real temptation to see the unchanged location as failure, like we don't move. But that's not it at all. This is what real practice actually looks like. The threshold doesn't turn into safe, solid ground the longer you stand on it. It's always shifting, always changing. Every real step forward just brings you to a new version of in between, with new questions and a different kind of attention you have to bring. So, what's different then? It's not where we are, it's how we're standing. Back in episode 0, we said, you're not waiting for someone to give you permission to change. You're already doing it. That was just the start. This whole season has been chipping away at what that actually means. The cost, the growth, what it demands from your body, your relationships, your inner life, your steady commitment, what it looks like when you're really practicing all the way, and what it looks like when you're not, what holds up, and what turns out to just be scaffolding you'll eventually outgrow. In episode 0, we stood at the threshold and said, for now, it's enough just to notice you're here. 10 episodes on, the real question is this. What does it mean to still be standing here and to finally understand why this is exactly where you're supposed to be? If you've been around since the start of this season, you've probably noticed that we didn't just touch on a bunch of random topics. If this is your first episode, I highly recommend returning to the beginning and starting there. There was a main through line running underneath it all. I'm not interested in breaking down each episode one by one, and that's not what this episode is about. What matters isn't a checklist of ideas. It's this thread that kept surfacing, episode after episode, even when we weren't naming it directly. I keep returning to one core idea. Every conversation, every story, every moment we explored, all came at one big question from a different side. What does it really mean to practice with honesty? And more than that, what does honest practice actually do to you as the days stack up? The arc we traced wasn't a straight shot, because life never is. We began with confusion and that weird unmooring feeling when you realize your compass isn't pointing where you thought it was. You're lost. The old markers don't work, and so you do what you have to. You pay attention. Next came silence, the heavy, sometimes awkward, definitely uncomfortable quiet that settles in when you stop running from yourself. We dug into balance as the live wire you have to keep holding on to, even when your arms get tired. And then there was the return. Coming back to practice after stepping away, only to discover you're not the same person you were. It's strange, familiar, but also changed. The groove doesn't quite fit right because somehow you've shifted. We went deeper, turning inward. We talked about practice that happens where nobody's watching, just you and your stubborn inner critic. The identity that piles up, almost accidentally, from the things you keep doing. The way your body starts to remember, even when your mind forgets. And we zoomed out to the long haul. What actually sticks around over a long period of time? What falls away? And what practice is really made of once life starts to get real and messy? Every topic, every turn kept circling the same inquiry, just from a different direction. The question wasn't, what should I believe? Or who's got it right? Or is there one correct way to do this? No, it was simpler and harder. What does it look like to keep showing up authentically? And what slowly, steadily builds up inside you when you do? I can't give you a neat and easy answer here. This isn't something you can shrink down and put in your wallet. But I can tell you what I learned, what this whole season keeps whispering. Honest, authentic practice changes you. It's not a mountaintop revelation either. Change seeps in during the regular stuff, the ordinary grind. You just keep coming back to the altar, to the silence, to grief, to work, even to those disappointingly uneventful Tuesday evenings. And that regular, quiet showing up, that's the real work. There's one thing I want to spell out. This season never tied everything off with a nice final answer. We didn't resolve the tension at the heart of the whole project. That tension, living right at the edge between knowing and uncertainty, between wanting to be better and just eking out what you have, between clarity and confusion, it's still there. It was there when we started, and it's here now. If anything, all this work just made the question sharper, more honest, more true to real life. We didn't answer it though. Why? Is it because we failed? No. It's because that's not the kind of question you solve. You live it, and that's a different thing altogether. Living right on the threshold, choosing not to press ahead before you're ready or duck back into something easier, that actually is the practice. It's the ground you're standing on, messy and halfway and all. That's what this season really offered. It didn't offer you a map to somewhere beyond the threshold. It gave you a place to stand with a little more honesty, right where you already are. Let's discuss a kind of failure that doesn't get enough honest attention. It's not just about the gaps in your practice, the times when everything feels dry, distant, or like you're just not showing up. Those quieter moments, the pauses, the stretches where you seem absent are actually part of the whole process. They're not the problem. If anything, they're where the real, deep work slips quietly along just beneath the surface, beyond your conscious reach. Episode 2 took on that space. The silence that feels like you've been abandoned, but really it's just presence in a different shape. There's another failure, one that actually matters, and I think it's worth poking at directly. It's that subtle moment that you can barely see happen sometimes, when you decide you've arrived. Maybe you don't spell it out, but you stop being hungry. You figure out enough. You change enough. You grow enough. Suddenly, your practice becomes a sort of routine, and the big work is keeping things tidy instead of risking anything new. Let's call it stagnation, though, honestly, that word doesn't quite catch it. It's more like something inside quietly dying, losing its pulse. It's a gradual hardening without anyone announcing its death. You've probably seen it in other people, even if you haven't called it by name. Someone whose practice has been exactly the same for a decade, who's got all the right words and all the familiar gestures. From the outside, they look the part, but you start to notice nothing's alive in there anymore. There's no edge, no new questions, no demands. The wildness, the curiosity, the risk is all gone. Here's the tough truth. This happens everywhere. It doesn't matter if your practice is a patchwork you built yourself or if you follow a tradition with centuries of history behind it. Stagnation sneaks in on both sides. It's not about what your practice looks like, it's about how you relate to it. So, what's really at stake here? I believe, and this is what everything in this season is circling, that the gods don't change you. The rituals don't change you. It's you. It's always you. The act of choosing again and again. The stubborn insistence on coming back. The refusal to pretend that the threshold where you stand is somehow the finish line. It's not about whose practice is more authentic or who's doing it better. Growth works the same way no matter your path. Whether you're deep in a tradition like Gardenary and Wicca, questioning and letting it demand new things from you, or you're out here building your own framework brick by brick, the core thing is the same for both. It's the refusal to stop moving, to refuse calcification. Your practice, no matter what shape it takes, is just a structure to help you keep making the choice to grow. But when you stop honestly making that choice, the structure empties out. Sure, the outside still looks fine. You can tick all the boxes. But inside, the wild part, the actual living practice, goes silent. It's so easy to mistake the appearance of practice for the reality of it. You can get the outer forms right and still be completely stagnant. You show up, you recite the words, you follow the steps, but maybe you haven't moved anywhere in years. Maybe you know all the answers, but have stopped letting yourself be changed. So here's the question, the one that cuts past all of that. Are you still moving? Not faking it, not talking about old movement from years ago. Right now, in this moment, does your practice actually ask something from you? Are you at the edge where you risk change, where you're uncomfortable, where you let yourself be shaped by what you find? If you're still moving, even if you stumble, even if it's messy, even if you wander back and forth, that's the true practice. That's where the power is. That's what makes your threshold a real one, not just a pretty decoration. And if you notice the museum creeping in, if you feel the performance, the slow fossilization, remember that it's not a final verdict. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It's just honest data. It tells you where you are, and you get to choose what you'll do with it. The only thing you really can't come back from is stopping noticing, letting yourself turn blind to your own calcification. That's the real risk. Everything else you can work with. Remember back in episode 0, there was a mention of the door hidden behind the bookshelf? Just as an image, not some grand metaphor. It's the kind of threshold you could easily miss if your mind is somewhere else. You might walk past it every day and never notice it, not necessarily because it's well hidden or anything, but because spotting it takes a kind of attention we rarely bring to places we think we already understand. I want to circle back to that image now, right here at the end of the season. It feels like it captures something true about how real practice unfolds, especially when it's time to move forward, whatever that next threshold is for you. Most of us, when we decide we want to grow, treat it like a problem to solve. We're on the hunt for the door. We read, investigate, set intentions, push ourselves, scan the walls for hinges. We treat the next step as something we can grab with enough effort and focus. Sometimes that works. Searching absolutely has its place. Intention and effort matter. The bookshelf door is different, though. It doesn't budge just because you finally spot it. It opens almost accidentally, when you shift your attention away from finding the door and get lost in the books, in the living, breathing experience of the practice itself. When you show up day after day, honestly and authentically, returning to the ordinary work that doesn't announce itself as special. Eventually, you lean against the shelf without realizing, and suddenly, it moves. Don't mistake this for just sitting around waiting for something magical to happen. It's about being fully present, less hunting, more inhabiting, less straining for the next stage, more fully living inside the present moment, inside the current chapter. There's a real paradox here. The more desperately you search for that hidden door, the less likely you are to find it. Constant reaching pulls your attention away from what you're actually doing and yanks you out of the now. The door opens from inside the practice, from inside the life you're already living, by engaging, not just by reaching. I think that's what living magically is about. Immersing yourself so deeply in the daily rituals, the honest devotion, the quiet faithfulness, that the door quietly reveals itself. The secret becomes obvious because you're finally paying attention to the whole room you've been in all along. The practice starts carrying you forward when you finally stop trying to push through it. And now, about Season 2, and without making any wild promises, this is the bridge. If Season 1 was all about inner work, the silence, the balance, identity, the body, that long, steady faithfulness, focusing on what practice shapes inside you, what it costs, what it leaves behind, Season 2 is going to turn the spotlight outward. Practiced life, seen from the outside. What it's like in the real world, on an ordinary Tuesday, how you bring it into places no one calls sacred. It's the same work, the same threshold, just from a different angle. And here's the twist. The hidden door doesn't lead you out somewhere new. It unlocks more of the room you've always been in. Suddenly, you can see what's been there the whole time. You were inside already. You just hadn't noticed the shelf could move. So here we are, still standing at the edge, hanging out in that in-between place. We're holding on to that tension, right smack in the middle of knowing and not knowing, wrestling with the gap between the practice we imagine and the one we actually pull off day after day. Let's be real for a second. This isn't failure. It's not the runner-up prize for folks who didn't make it. This messy, honest space is exactly what a living practice looks like. Here's what I've noticed over time, through all the seasons and all the days before. The threshold is the actual address, not just a pit stop while you figure stuff out. It's where this thing happens. People who walk around thinking they finally arrived, that they're done, standing on solid ground with no questions left, they haven't gotten further than you. They're just being less honest about where they actually are. Growing doesn't erase tension. Instead, it stretches you so you can carry it better. That's the shift. Facing the in-between with more honesty instead of trying to ignore it or wiping it away. Everything we've looked at this season circles back to this idea. The kind of silence that softens things, that isn't just focused on resolution or neatly wrapping things up. Balance that's not just hovering in the middle, but an active tension you keep working with. Coming back to the practice, not where you left it, but where you actually are. Private devotion that cuts through all the performance. Identity shifting because the practice keeps writing and rewriting you. A body that holds on even while your mind has to keep learning the same old thing. Faith that lasts because it gives you something true, authentic, and real. A practice you can trust, one that's been proven over and over. We've never been building toward a solid landing. We've been working toward a truer way of standing. And that honest standing, it's this simple. You're the one doing it. Nobody else can take your place. Your gods walk beside you. Your tradition shapes you. Your community supports you. But in the end, the choice to show up and keep the practice real and alive is all yours. It always was. Practice has the power you give it. You choose to show up, to pay attention, to let yourself be changed by what you find. If you withdraw, if you take yourself out, the power doesn't magically come from somewhere else. It stops. That's not a weight you have to carry alone. You're not just sitting back waiting for some gift to drop in your lap. You and your practice meet in relationship, and what you both bring is exactly where the meaning is. So what does it mean to still be here, right at the threshold after all this time? It means you finally get why you're here. The in-between isn't just something you grit your teeth and bear, waiting for everything to get resolved. You've put in enough work to see that this is where practice lives. Moving forward doesn't mean leaving the threshold behind. It means stepping into another version of it. Your practice now isn't the practice you had at the start. It's got more miles on it. You've looked at it more honestly. You've added a new understanding about what it really is, deep down. The threshold where you stand now is not the same as before, even though it might look like it from the outside. This is movement, the kind you feel inside, even when everything else seems unchanged. And now, just like always, the real question is the same. What's the next step? Not, where does this all end? Not, when do you finally arrive? Just, what does choosing to move forward look like, today, from right where you are? That's not just enough, it's the whole thing. I want to close with a couple more thoughts. You never found the threshold by searching for it. That's the part I keep returning to as this season wraps up. That hidden door we talked about in episode 0 didn't reveal itself because you hunted for it. You found it simply by living, by showing up for the everyday stuff, again and again, honestly enough, until one day the shelf slid aside and you realized you were already through. That's really what this whole season has been about. Sticking with the practice, showing up, letting things hide until, suddenly, they don't. Eventually, the room you've been standing in, maybe bored or restless, actually shows you what it's been hiding all along. Season 1 was all about interior work. The questions turned inward. How does silence actually shape you? What does it really take to find balance? What slowly grows inside you when you just stick with the practice? What happens when your body remembers what your mind keeps forgetting? All of it was about understanding your own ground before you move forward. This isn't work that gets finished. It really never does. But at a certain point, that inward focus starts nudging you to look outside. It pushes you to step into real days, real conversations, real life where you don't have a script. That's where season 2 starts. It's not a new practice or a new threshold. It's looking at the same threshold from a new angle. How do you actually live this out? Not in the set-aside sacred hour, not in the rituals you carefully arranged, but in the random Tuesday that feels like nothing special. In the odd conversation, the daily grind of just being someone who practices, even when everything about it feels very ordinary. That's where we're heading. The shelf moved, but you didn't force anything. You just kept returning, kept working with honesty and regularity, and eventually it shifted all by itself. That's all it ever takes. And you know what? There's a lot more space on this side than you imagined. If something here stayed with you, you don't need to resolve it. Let it unfold in its own time. There's also writing from this same place, brief letters on Substack, and longer reflections on Medium. I'm Veyrin Vale, and this has been The Hidden Threshold, a project of Obscura Meridian.